Hey, everybody. This is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. And I have a really cool guest today. This is one of the nicest, kindest human beings I've known, with Shantell Ogden. When my show first started, like a little over 3 years ago, I don't know how. Oh, Bill DeLuigi. And we never did an interview, but Shantell, you say, hey, you know what? I have this person I think that'd be good for you to interview. And it was so kind of her, just like randomly doing that. And now I finally got her on the show, which is great. She's got a lot of stuff going on musically and on the peripheries of music. So I'm glad to talk to her. She's very talented. And again, one of the nicest ladies I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. So with Shantell Ogden, a quick message, make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com and her dog /subscribe, and subscribe to the audio and video. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you click the subscribe button and the little emoji that looks like a bell, that would be cool. Helps us out with the YouTube algorithm. All right. Background on Shantell. She's got a gift for crafting songs with conviction and emotion. Her gift, combined with a work ethic gained from growing up on a farm, is paying dividends. Her songs have received airplay on more than 800 country and Americana radio stations internationally, reaching top 2 chart positions both here in the States and in Europe. Her songs have also appeared on CW's TV series Heart of Dixie and in several feature films. She has 7 solo records and has also music supervised several independent films. As a performing Americana artist, she's been praised by Maverick Magazine over in the UK, No Depression, Performer Magazine, For the Country Record, and other notable media. She's appeared at Americana Fest, CMA Fest, and on Coffee, Country, and Cody broadcasts from the world-famous Opry, home of the Opry, WSM 650. She's won honors for Songwriter of the Year and Americana Album of the Year for The Road That Drives Me in the 2018 International Music and Entertainment Awards, as well as several other independent music awards. She tours internationally from her home in Nashville, Tennessee. And this is something you don't read when someone lives in the Bronx. When at home, she's known for keeping her front door open and a song drifting down the street. That was good when I read it. I was like, that's kind of different from where I grew up. Hey, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm glad we got to do this finally.
Me too. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. Okay, so how did you first get started in the music business, and what was your maybe first break?
Oh, that's a good question. So I actually brought something to show and tell on your show. Is that okay?
Yeah, right on. Absolutely.
So I grew up playing piano, but the first guitar I ever had, I actually found in my grandpa's attic. Okay. And it had been my dad's guitar. And I took it home and I would tune it, and every time I would strum it, it would go out of tune. And, kind of an inexpensive, guitar.
Yeah, of course.
And, my parents got me my first guitar when I was probably a teenager. And anyway, so I had this old guitar, but I'm sentimental, right? So, because I'm a songwriter. So I thought, what am I going to do with this old guitar? It's not really for playing, but I want to keep it. So I had a friend in Nashville turn it into an art project.
Oh, very cool. That's like a stained glass kind of.
Yeah, so she painted it, and then she put like an epoxy on it and some broken glass for the texture. And
very cool.
So this is in my writer's room in Nashville, and that's where I am today talking with you. So
that's cool. It almost looks like a resonator because of it's just
It still doesn't hold the tune, but
doesn't matter.
I love it, and I just wanted to show you that because I don't think I've ever shared that. I thought, well, maybe the guitar people out there will appreciate a
definitely definitely a lot of guitar nerds listening.
Yeah. So the big break, I think I don't mean to be kludgy about this, but I'm not sure I've had a big break.
You know what? That is totally fair.
I've had a lot of great moments and small steps.
Yes.
And I think, I have a friend of mine. So I went to Berklee College of Music, and he moved out to LA after we finished, and he's pursuing composition out there and film scoring. And we were talking one day, and we said, the music industry used to be sort of this ladder. And you did this, and then you did this, and then you did this, and you did this. Well, now it's kind of more like a scaffold. and you're kind of over here doing this thing, and then you might like move over here to do this thing, and then maybe you get a break and you do some things over here. But it's really entrepreneurial, and I think especially now, musicians are having to use their creativity to find ways to make money.
Yes.
And it's not, there's no one size fits all journey. And that's something I love about it. And sometimes it's hard because you see people, I've been in Nashville for 15 years, and sometimes you see people that come to town and like within months, they're hitting on all cylinders and things are happening for them. And you think, man, I've just been cranking away. But then you have to remind yourself that, nobody's journey is the same, and no person is the same.
Right. And that's rare. Someone comes to Nashville in 6 months. especially nowadays, that's,
It is rare. It is rare. And I think one thing I've been grateful for is I've been really able to appreciate the journey and those little wins. I've taken time for those little wins because you never know how long it's going to be before there is another little win.
Right.
And so I think having that perspective and knowing that, if there is some big thing that happens later on, some big career defining moment, that, it will have been years and years and years behind it. And I think that's something that's special too,
Well, just to be honest with you, out of the people I've asked that question to, very few people have a big break. It's a series of little breaks. And it's the same in business. My friends in business, myself, that was never anything like, oh man, I just pushed this, I added a red button to my website and oh my God, that's not real. That doesn't happen. It happens it's like an iPhone. People think, oh man, it just took off. It did. But that's one out of probably a million businesses. That's not normal for things like that, So your career, but I'll also tell you, I haven't interviewed too many people that have 7 records.
Yeah. So this is kind of where the farm background comes in. So I grew up on a 3rd generation dairy farm, and
where did you grow up?
I grew up in rural Utah.
Okay.
And so in my family, so I was 8 years old and my dad said, it's time you had a job. And so I started like feeding calves on our farm after school. And then later, when I got to be a teenager, we had a processing plant and a retail store where we sold our own ice cream and that kind of thing. So I worked at the store while I was, growing up there as well. And so this work ethic and this, like, you've got to show up, you've got to produce, that really follows me as a creative. And I'm not one of those people that sits around and goes, well, I'm just going to wait until. I'm one of those people that just starts going after it. And I feel a real responsibility as a songwriter and as an artist to produce music and to produce work. And I think that comes just from I just have this urgency of, you need to do something, like you need to be working at it. And, some writers, some artists, I think they get idealistic and they're like, well, I'm going to write a hit song. Well, great, go for it. Yeah. But it's probably going to take you 100 songs to get to that hit song. And, there's a lot you can do and learn along the way.
Yeah, so definitely.
That's just my philosophy is I feel like if you're a songwriter and an artist, you need to be producing music and you need to be producing art.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think most creatives would feel the same way on that, Is the farm still active?
It's different now than it was. It is still active. My dad manages still crops in the summer and growing crops. We sold off the processing plant. We now have beef cows, which are a lot easier to take care of than dairy cows.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, it's still part of the fabric of our family, and it's still
Yeah.
something that is continuing in a different form.
Yeah. It's a well-known fact, they've done studies in hiring people that uh, worked in their family business or grew up on a farm. Those are your best workers for the reasons that you're talking about. The work ethic is just, there's no
Yeah.
there's no time to be lazy, and no one's putting up with it. If you want to,
Yeah.
that's
And I
really
mean,
cool.
I grew up watching both my parents work. I mean, my mom taught school for 35 years. And, I remember getting ready for school, and my dad would come in from, like an early morning milking or feeding, and, his mustache would have icicles just hanging from it,
Oh
in
my
the
God.
winter. And, but I
Wow.
had
That's,
that, that was modeled for me, right? Like,
yeah.
we get up every day, we go do our jobs, we're dependable and reliable people. And I think, that's something I'm very grateful for, that I learned that, because my parents are not creative people. Like, they're not musical people. My mom plays the piano, and she's musical in that way, and she's creative in different ways. But they really taught me, like, even if you're a creative person, there's a lot of responsibility. And I find that most of the people in Nashville who are successful, they treat it like a job, and they show up
Interesting.
and
Yeah.
they write every day, and they treat it with the same level of commitment that anyone does in their
Yeah.
profession. Ones that are successful at it.
I think as a whole, it's funny. I was just thinking about this morning. I don't know why, but as a whole, the Nashville community has just the best work ethic, of all the music communities. Nothing against LA and New York City, but it's just a very, you don't have a lot of shady, sleazy people there. Everybody's pretty supportive and above board. And it's for me, it's been a great experience.
Yeah, I think Nashville has a lot of people with rural roots and rural ties.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the storytelling.
Mhm.
That's what people used to do back in the day, sit around on their front porches and tell stories. And I think that's really at the heart of songwriting, and songwriting's at the heart of Nashville. And I think the people that are attracted to songwriting and storytelling are the people that identify with those values.
Yeah. I would say that I would agree with you there. What made you go to so you went to Berkeley. Did you go to Nashville straight after Berkeley? Well,
I did, yeah. So Berkeley had a spring break trip. So I had come through Nashville a couple of times, and visited friends here. But Nashville really has a neat, they do a neat tour of Nashville. Berkeley does on spring break, and it's organized by the school, and you come down, and for like 4 days, you sit in front of these incredible musicians like Eddie Bears, and incredible songwriters like Vince Gill, and amazing people, and they sort of tell their stories, and it's really a neat experience. And then you go backstage at the Opry and get to go to the Grand Ole Opry. And I think, for me, recognizing my goal when I finished school was, I want to become a better songwriter. And I knew that Nashville, being around great writers, would help me be a better writer.
yeah, for sure.
And for me, it's like, well, if you want to pursue music on a professional level, it's either New York, LA, or Nashville. And, being a country girl,
You're in the right place.
I couldn't handle, the traffic and expense of like New York and LA. They're great cities, but Nashville was a good fit for me personally.
Yeah, you're going to find more common ground.
Yeah, you can find a place to park. You can find a place to live that won't kill you financially. So the lifestyle here, I think, is one of the things that's really attractive, and you find a lot of music here besides country happening as well. And a lot of people moving here from LA because they do recognize that there is such a quality of life.
Well, especially now with everything going on out in California. Yeah. People in the
Yeah.
whole state is shut down. It's hard to do anything there.
Yeah.
To me, you're like a true Americana artist, right? You're very consistent, your music. Were you always playing that style of music, and is that what you listened to growing up as well? Although it wasn't called Americana when you were growing up, I know that.
So, I mean, I listened to, so my family was, you know, kind of into all kinds of music. In fact, one of the funniest things is that my mom, I don't know why, but she loved the Bee Gees. I mean, I love the Bee Gees, but she would put on every week when we were cleaning, she would put on the Bee Gees.
Sorry, I'm not like.
I have a turntable behind me that was my aunt's.
That's great.
I've got a Bee Gees record, and when I feel like I need to clean my house, like I'm putting on the Bee Gees.
That you do. All right.
Association with cleaning and the Bee Gees. So, but like my dad listened to a lot of classic country, you know, Keith Rogers, Tom T. Hall, you know, people like that. And I think we always had the radio on down at the barn. We always, you know, it was just kind of always on. You know, we had it on in the truck, we had it on in the tractors, we had it on at the barn. And I was just like, music was just kind of being pumped at me.
Yeah.
At home and when I was doing things with my family. So it was always there. And I think what really hooked me in to it all was storytelling. And I think what Americana is, it's really almost, you could argue that it's kind of what country was back in the 90s when I was growing up. It's kind of like country music has shifted from more of a storytelling kind of genre and more roots driven to more pop driven.
Totally. Yeah.
And kind of the fallout of that was this Americana movement where artists like Marty Stewart and I mean, there's tons of them, kind of said, well, you know, Mary Chapin Carpenter, right? There was no place in country music for them anymore because they were too traditional. And so those people kind of just shifted into this world of Americana where there were already people like John Prine and like troubadour type songwriters.
Sure.
And Americana is kind of one of those genres that it's very expansive. And so you have, sorry, I hit my
writing a song right now.
You have this, like on one side of the coin, you have like, you can have blues music, like real roots driven, like the Wood Brothers, right? And on the other hand, you can have gospel music and bluegrass. You know, Ricky Skaggs and the kind of stuff he does. And then there's people like Sean Colvin that have more of like a pop influenced singer-songwriter style. And it's kind of like Americana is a very open genre. But there's not a lot of, how do you say it? It's almost like it's a bit more open genre than other genres.
Yeah, it's huge. It's massively inclusive. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
What's interesting too is people ask me about the UK because I've been touring over there for a few years. Now, what they call country. So when I go to the UK, I'm considered a country artist. Unless they know what Americana is, and then they'll say, well, she's a country Americana artist. Because country over there is much more broad. Right? It's Parton and it's Brandy Clark and it's much, what they consider to be country is much more broad than what's sort of narrowly defined on the radio in the US.
So it's almost like they use the word country for Americana over there.
Well, yeah, I mean, although there is an Americana thing happening there as well, but they just don't have such a narrow definition of country in the UK. And one of the things I love, and this is one of the reasons that I started touring and promoting over there on radio, is they'll play Keith Urban followed by Shantell Ogden.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Open there to,
so it's like AM radio was in the 70s or something.
Yeah, they're very open to independent artists, and they don't care who you are. If they like your music, and if they like what you're, if they like the stories you're telling, they'll play you. It's like Dolly Parton, Shantell Ogden, George Strait, Susie from Yakima. Like, it's just, it's a very open thing there. And so that's what makes it cool, I think, is that people, I think one of the reasons they have a broader definition is because the radio stations play a broader sampling of music.
I was going to ask you about, excuse me, how did you get to touring internationally? Because you do a lot of that.
Well, it started because I made contact with a friend in the UK through some of the performances that I was doing here, CMA Fest, and a few other things that I was involved in. And he has a lot of connections there. And he said, look, I've got this, I've got some radio promotions that we can do for independent artists. I started working with him. Then I was getting some relationships going with some of the DJs that were playing my music. Then
you could still do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Still, like these presenters on the stations over there they want to know you. If they like your music, they want to know you. So it just kind of evolved, like over a year or so, kind of promoting my music there through this radio promotions company. Then it was like, well, I should try a tour. And so I did that. And then one tour was like, okay, that was cool. We should do this again. And then it just kind of kept growing. And I mean, this would have been probably my 6th year going over there.
That's fantastic.
This last summer.
That's fantastic. How long are the tours?
So they're not super long, maybe 10 days to 14 days. They're just 2 weeks. That's, for me, the good thing about England and Wales and whatever, like the UK in general, you can get to places pretty easily. Like, it's not huge. Like, it's not a huge country.
Yeah, right.
So you kind of, in that amount of time, you can kind of cover the area pretty well.
Yeah.
And,
well, it's probably as big as like New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut.
Yeah. It's like, in terms of land, it's not a huge piece of land. So, and the thing is, the audiences there will come to shows. They want to know you. They want to buy your music. And I've been told it's kind of like it was maybe on the club scene back in the 80s in the US, where there was this kind of like people wanted to see live music. And I think people will want that again. I think that
I hope so.
has made it like very clear that people want to hear live music and they want to be part of an audience. And it's been hard. It's been hard on the industry, but it's also been hard on the music fans.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so, man. I think people are dying to see music actually.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you, you've always been a solo artist. Had you ever considered being a side person?
No.
No, that's cool. Well, how come? Because that's, I mean, that's,
I don't mind singing harmonies for my friends. So when we do writers rounds, like if you mentioned Bill, we do a lot together. We've traveled a lot together. And if Bill does a song, like I'll sing harmonies for him. You know, I think it's not because I don't appreciate sort of the band thing, but I always just feel like what I have to really give that makes me different than anybody else is me as how I see the world, right? That's what makes me different than any other songwriter is me. So I guess like in terms of writing, I write with a lot of different people, and that's a very collaborative process. But in terms of performing, it's expensive to put a band out on the road, and it's easier for me to just take my guitar and go to the UK, and I have some acoustic drum loops, and I've kind of made it into a joke that I'll say, I brought my drummer along, and I'll hold up a little picture. And then I just play the loops, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not opposed to it if I ended up in some situation that it made sense.
Yeah.
But who knows what the future holds?
Sure. Yeah, I was just curious about that. If you've made 7 records, I mean, like, for me, I consider myself unemployable. I've been self-employed 20 something years. I could not work for somebody. It would have to be some wacky situation. So I figured it was like that. If you've got 7 records out on your own, you're pretty independent. I mean, that says a lot about you. And it's hard to make that shift to suddenly say, oh, okay, I'll be a side person. Mm-hmm. But I was just curious.
Yeah, it didn't really, part of it too, I think there are songs that I will do as an artist that nobody else is going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, I was with some girlfriends a few years ago, and, 3 of us are songwriters, and I had seen this sign on in a bathroom. It was one of those like stall things. It says "Love shouldn't hurt," and it was about abuse, right? And so,
wow, that's heavy.
Yeah. So the 3 of us had all had different experiences in our life, and we decided to write this song called "Love Shouldn't Hurt." And the first line is, he picked out her clothes, he picked out her friends. He picked her apart again and again. And then it kind of goes on here, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's not a song that, Taylor Swift's going to do, like that.
Probably not.
And those are the kind of songs that I feel like have a lot of power in the world and a lot of meaning in the world. And, I've played that song, and people have cried. They've said, like, I needed to hear that. That's how I felt. Like, I left in a bad relationship. So I guess
that's pretty cool.
Some of the reason that I'm an artist who does my own thing is because I write these songs and I'm like, man, that's such a powerful message.
Yeah.
No one else is going to record that. So that's going to go on my next record, Not all songs are like that, but there's definitely a grain of truth in that. And my vocal producer / coach has said to me, some artists are kind of like a voice of warning, or, they're storytellers, and they share things that maybe make people uncomfortable a little bit, but that's their truth. And that's one of the things that they're sort of sent here to do, is to share real things with people.
Yeah, you look at like Neil Young, people like that, you're writing serious lyrics. Yeah. No, I totally get it. I think you're an artist. You're just not a side person now. As I'm getting to know you, you like doing your thing, and you feel very confident about it, and you feel, you have a unique message, and that's hard to not to suppress. So I totally get that.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me about, you have a substance use recovery project that you started. What prompted that, and what have you learned from that, or what are you getting out of your experience with that?
So for several years, I've written songs, again, as we just talked about, that had I don't really write party songs, but I'll write songs about the impact of the partying and the drinking. And so I had written a song a few years ago with Bill called When the Highway Calls. And I had written a song a few years ago that was called Who Comes First. And it was about being in a relationship with someone who was an addict. And you, as the song unfolds, you realize they're not talking about being cheated on with another person. They're being cheated on with this addiction. And I'd written songs about, sort of the dark and the light that we all have inside of us, fighting off those demons that we all carry in different ways. And a few years ago, I was like, I really, in the back of my mind, I kind of had this idea that I wanted to do something that was really focused around addiction recovery and substance abuse recovery. And, my grandpa, who was one of the sage deliverers of wisdom in my life, I remember we were at the funeral of one of my cousins who had OD'd. And I've had several family members OD and die from addiction. And we were there, and my grandpa said to me, he said, well, there's nothing so bad that something good can't come from it. And at the time, he was talking about other family members who were struggling with addiction, thinking like maybe this person's passing would be a wake-up call.
Right.
And, sadly, in my family, the people that have been abusers of substances have all ended up in the same place, and that's the cemetery. And
wow.
So for me, like, I, kind of thinking about that, what good can I do in this community? How can I help? How can I reach out? And what led me to it is just knowing that music can heal people, and having experiences with hearts being touched, and then my own experiences. I think everybody's had that experience of hearing something on the radio in a song that was like, wow, that's how I felt, and I didn't even know that's how I felt.
Yeah.
And I think that is that's the gift of music. And I, with COVID and seeing more about overdoses and the triggers that are happening for people who normally can go to a community for support, but they're isolated.
Yeah, that's
the financial strain. And I thought, this is the time for me to bring this project forward. So this collection of songs, I wrote a couple additional songs for it. And then I dusted off some. There was one song called The End of Trouble Road that I wrote maybe 12 years ago, pretty soon after coming to Nashville. And I always thought, man, this is such a cool song. And it's about really coming to faith, leaving addiction and coming to faith. And so I was like, man, that song would be perfect for this. And sometimes it just takes a song it takes time for a song to find its path. But just really honored to reach out. Most of the people that I've written these songs with have had struggles with addiction personally.
Yeah.
That brings an additional element to it. And I've been so touched. So I have a goal of, so September's Addiction Awareness Month.
Okay. I didn't know.
So that's also another piece that's kind of aligning here. But I'm $1,000 away from my goal. And I found a way to really tie in the actual music and how it's going to help individuals in recovery. So if you make a donation, let's say of $25, you'll get a download of the album, but 2 albums will go to 2 people in recovery programs.
Okay, cool.
And same thing is like, there's ways that you can donate on the site. You can donate a concert. So I will play the songs live with stories, and I've got this whole vision for how it will unfold with stories and videos of people talking about their journeys. And that's something else that people can donate. But the funds are totally going towards funding this record, paying for it, and getting it released. There's no profit in it. There's no, like, it's just this labor of love, because I feel like, you know, it's something that I can do, and it's something that it's a way I can gift. And I think most people understand. We may not have all been addicts ourselves, but we can understand a lot of the feelings, right? We can understand loneliness and depression and not feeling good enough. And, you know, people, the human experience, I think, is the grand connector in all this.
And I don't know anybody who has lives have not been touched by some sort of addiction. I can tell you, a woman this morning, my wife just sent me a text when we were leaving the gym, and she says, so-and-so's son-in-law or son just died of an overdose. And the guy had been clean for a while, you know, and he relapsed, and boom, that shit just happens. Let me tell people where to go if they want to participate in that, in the recovery project. It's at shantellogden.com, and it's SHANTELL Ogden, OGDEN.com/angels. And all the information is on there. And I hope you do really well with that. That's a good cause.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Thank you.
Now, you're also a freelance, music supervisor. Tell the listeners what that means, and also, how did you get involved with that, and what are the biggest challenges of doing that?
So it started because I was working with production companies on getting music that I was creating into their films.
Okay.
And as I was building those relationships, there was this moment where I said, well, you know, here are the songs that I'm sending you, but is there anything else you need?
See, that's where you're so nice. And like, I know you were just, no, seriously, like, you were being just so genuine. Like, you know, I mean, I have to tell you, when we had this scheduled and I had to cancel it because of COVID, just because I had a lot of things going, you know, it was just like an adjustment. I wanted to see what else was, you know, I was going to be doing. And the first thing you did is say, hey, is everything okay? Can I help you? And I was like, wow, I was like blown away by your kindness. You know, not, I mean, like, not that I was expecting anybody to, because you weren't the only person to be like negative, but you know, that honestly, that just blew me away. That was your reaction. Not like, okay, Craig, cool. You know, whatever. You're like, hey, can I help you? Is everything okay? I was like, wow. I was like flattered. Anyway, that's very nice.
So I mean, it was just out of a genuine desire to help. And I thought, you know, here's these filmmakers who are like bootstrapping everything, and they've got all these things they're trying to figure out, and then they need like a dance club song. Right. I don't know how to get that or where to get it. You know, it's like, do you Google dance club songs and then it's like this whole world opens up. Well, so they said, well, yeah, actually there's a couple of scenes that we're struggling with. And fortunately, this is where the Nashville community comes in. Yeah. So I've been here for, I think at the time I'd been here for 10 years, and I know all these incredible musicians and songwriters. And so it's like, well, I can find you that.
Right.
And so I sent a note out to my friends. I'm like, hey, looking for this song for this film. This is what it's like. You know, this is the scene. Do you have anything? And it was like, boom, 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 boom. You know, I got like 4 or 5 options, sent them. And I said, and by the way, you know, I got this song, and to me, it really felt like an end credit song. So I don't know if this would be something that you'd be interested in. And they're like, oh my gosh, we love it. Like, we love this song. So they put it on the end credits, and then, you know, they placed it in their couple songs, and there were a couple of mine in there too. And it just kind of started like that. And I was able to help. I think one of the things that I'm most proud of, like truly most proud of, in the last year, I've helped 6 different artists get their very first film placement.
Placements? That's very cool of you. And that's a cool thing. Everybody loves that.
It's neat, right? Because it's like these people, you have to kind of have a way in or build a way in. And, you know, these people were just like over the moon, right? This is my first time that a song of mine will be in a picture. And so it's exciting, you know, and that, I mean, really what a music supervisor does is they find music to put into scenes in a film or a TV show. And I love it when there are types of music, especially that I don't have, right? Because it's like, okay, I need a, you know, hip hop track, or I need a heavy metal, you know, 80s rock ballad. Then I get to see what people I know come back with. And it's just so cool. You know, it's like you hear, remember this one gal, I was looking for some music for a Christmas film. And she sent me this song that just blew me away. And it kind of is like it's kind of like an iconic, All I Want for Christmas Is You kind of song. Like, it has that feel. And I'm like, man, this is like a fantastic song that should be on the radio. But this artist is in Sweden or whatever. And that's one thing that's pretty cool about music, and especially even what's happening now is, you know, I'm talking to people that I've met on different networking things that are in New Jersey and California, and I'm writing on Zoom, and I'm, you know, working with producers in different places, and people are realizing that collaboration is possible.
Well, I think in licensing, that's always been a very strong part of it, collaboration. You know, you really need to work with other people. You know, that's really cool. So you enjoy, it sounds like, I mean, you got a lot of enthusiasm when you talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I love it because it's, you know, it's music. How can you not love listening to music and trying to put together the puzzle pieces?
That's cool. And it's nice to work with people and talk to people all over. I do that. I love it. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Hey, what were some maybe low points or dark periods you've had to go through, and how'd you get through them?
Oh, man. So when I first moved to Nashville, I had a non-paying music internship, which is the standard. And I was working at this music-related company, and the guy running it had some cash flow problems. And so it was weekly, am I going to get paid or not? Like, it was just this thing. And I remember, I don't know if they do this in Florida, in other places, but in Nashville, if you don't pay your rent for a certain amount of time, they just like move all of your stuff out, and they just like, they evict you essentially, and they just put all your stuff out on the lawn. And I lived at the time in this working class neighborhood, and it wasn't an uncommon occurrence for that to happen.
To see people's stuff out on the lawn from the
they clean people's apartment. I mean, they hadn't paid their rent in a few months or whatever, and they get to a point, they're just like, well, we got to use this, rental that's not making us money. So they just took all their stuff out and put it on the lawn. Well, I remember I was working for this company, and I was like, I don't have money to do laundry this week.
Oh.
And somebody had been kicked out of this is kind of a really vulnerable story for me to share, but somebody had been kicked out of their apartment, and there was a snare drum stand. And I looked at that and I'm like, I'm going to go see if I can sell it. So I took it to this local music store, and I sold it for like $15, and I made money to do laundry that week.
Wow.
And I think, those are moments that really test your devotion to the journey. And as hard as they are, and I've had several others like that through my time here, as hard as they are, under it has always been this very sweet feeling that this is the right path for me, and this is what I need to be doing with my life.
Wow. Thank you. First of all, thanks for sharing that. But what was that? Why do you think you had that feeling? Like, I understand what you're saying. First of all, let me see if I understand it. That in spite of what's going on, this isn't a message to bail, that everything's going to be okay and you're in the right place. Why do you think you had that feeling?
Because in my mind, God provided a way.
Right.
I had a very simple yet urgent need to be able to do my laundry.
Right.
And there was a path for that. It's not a path like looking back on, I'm super like excited to share, because it was really, I felt bad about the people who had been, evicted, and like now I'm taking their stuff, but it had been out there for a few days, and I'm like, well, it's just going to get thrown away. And I guess, there's always been some answer in it for me.
Right.
Like you get to a point sometimes that you feel really discouraged, and then like you'll get an email from somebody saying, I listened to this song, it made a difference in my life, thank you so much for making it, and putting it into the world. Those are the things that I think remind you. I'll do another show and tell really quick, because it's right here. So a few years ago, I had a writing session with Wood Newton, who's a hit songwriter, and my friend Markham Stewart. And Wood had read a story in the news about somebody who had mistakenly gotten an email from a school. So he's in, I think he was in New Jersey or New York. He got this random email from this school in Nashville area. And it said, we need donations for our classes this year. And so he could have very easily just hit to spam, right? Well, instead of doing that, he went and bought a bunch of mouses and mouse pads and mailed them to the school.
That's cool.
And he did it with this note that said, basically just I challenge you now to go find someone to serve and to give to. And so it became this school-wide thing. Well, it got picked up with the local news, and Wood had read about this story. And so we wrote this song about this story. It's called "A Little Bit of Love Goes a Long, Long Way." And then we donated proceeds back to the school, and we went to perform this song at the school. And
that's really cool.
yeah, it was a really cool experience. It was
that's like the rest of the story kind of thing that nobody gets to hear. That's pretty cool.
So it was really neat. And so we went to the school and we performed the song for the kids. And they all came in, you know, to the little auditorium. We played the song for them. And afterwards, there was this little girl who, as people were leaving, I said, well, I'll donate a hug to anyone who wants one. And this little girl came running up to me, and she just like threw her arms around me.
That's cute.
And I have this in my music room to remind me of why I do this. And
how did that make you when that happened?
Well, I think
something must have got triggered there to have that kind of meeting.
Of like pure joy.
Yeah.
He was so excited about singing the song with us.
Okay.
She was so happy because we did some other singing with them, and too, there was just so much joy in her, and she just couldn't contain herself. It was just this pure, beautiful happiness. And I think that's why, you know, at the end of the day, we all have a love of music.
Right.
It's just a deeply rooted joy that we have. And we find different ways, you know, to express that joy. You do it through this amazing show where you have these incredible guests who come and talk about their experiences. And that's one of the ways that you celebrate music.
Yeah,
you know?
For sure.
And so I don't know, I think that it's grounding, right? Those are the moments that are really grounding.
Yeah, very much. That was really sweet. Thank you for sharing that. That's cool.
Yeah.
I hope there's nothing to forgive. You know that. I'm not a therapist, but like you didn't do anything wrong by taking that music stand, laying out in the street. You do know that, right? Like nobody was coming back for that outside of the trash man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
that would not be a good thing to hang on the cross for. Then.
I've made my peace with it. Yeah.
Yeah, good. There's been a lot worse things people have done. It's funny because I think you fixed your hat or something earlier, and I said, "Oh, this is something a guy wouldn't be doing that." It's so funny because like I could never see a guy like I had to do my guys would like wear their clothes A side B side. They would never think be like, "Oh man, I need to eat a steak" or something like that. It's just funny, but I'm glad you did that, and thank you for sharing it. That was really sweet.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears for just a couple minutes and talk about guitars. Are you only an acoustic player or do you play electric? Because you had electric on your last record and it's a couple of real cutting solos there. Pretty good.
Well, so I make I do not play my own stuff in the studio. I don't. As a general rule. Now, I have one album that I did my own guitar stuff on, the Stories Behind Songs album. I played my own guitar, my own rhythm guitar, but I am not a lead guitar player. And when I was in Berklee, I was surrounded by all of these high-esque players.
Yeah.
And it was like we would sit in these classes and, there would be some kind of a loop going or whatever, and everybody would have their electric guitars. And, the teacher would be like, hey, okay, let's do some solos. And it's like, so-and-so. Shantell, would you like to do a solo? No, thank you. Go to the next person. But I was somebody who, I went to Berklee to be a better songwriter.
Yeah, composition.
Guitar happened to be my instrument. I was very lucky that I had some professors like Jim Kelly who they knew what my goals were. They knew that I was never going to be, you know, a lead player, and that being a rhythm sort of self-accompanist was going to be fine for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did have an electric guitar when I went to college, just because it was easier to learn like all the jazz scales and everything.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine learning jazz scales on an acoustic guitar.
Yeah,
Oh my God, yeah, that's got to be tough.
I did have an electric for music school, but then when I finished school, I kept it for a few years, and I'm like, you know, I'm just probably never going to play this. And so I sold it, and I have 3 guitars. I'm a 3-guitar person. I have kind of my crappy, like it's been beat up and I've had it forever, and like if we're camping or something, I'll take that guitar.
Right.
And then I have 2 really nice acoustics, and they're both made by the same guitar maker in Atlanta. His name's Kent Everett. He's a phenomenal guitar maker. And I have a cedar top. They're right back there. I have a cedar top guitar of his, and then I have that's like a full size, and then I have a petite, which is a little smaller guitar that I've been playing for the last few years that he made as well. And I love those guitars, but I'm not one of those people that has like 300 guitars.
No, you'd be surprised. There's plenty of other people that are like you, believe it or not. They're really, especially singer-songwriters.
Yeah.
They may have, you know, maybe they'll play an electric and they'll have an acoustic, and that's it. That's not uncommon at all.
Like, again, goes to my grandpa. He's like, you know, well, why do you need 5 saddles? You only got 1 butt, you know? It's like that kind of thing.
That's farm wisdom.
Why do you need 50 guitars? You can only play 1 at a time, you know, that kind of thing. So that, I think that's part of it too.
Do you play rhythm on your own records, or somebody else plays them too?
No, I let the studio musicians do it. And the reason is they're so much faster and so much better than, you know, and then of course, when I'm writing them, I play.
Sure.
And do writer's rounds, I play for myself. And when I'm on tour, I play for myself. And, but it's just easier in the studio to let the pros, you know, the pro players just do their thing. And, you know, I know some people are like, well, you really ought to be, but I'm like, well, but you know, I'm funding my records myself, and it's like the time in the studio adds up to money. And you know,
that shows a lot of maturity, actually, to tell you the truth. That, like, number 1, there's no ego involved there. Number 2, you're a songwriter. You want to get the best quality music, and if hiring someone else is going to get it done, I mean, it's not like, well, you didn't play guitar on here, so it's not a good song. I mean, nobody gives, you know, no one cares. You know, they want to hear good music, and if you're putting out good music, what does it matter? You're singing, you wrote the songs. You know, there's no quiz, right? There's no like boxes you got to tick off. You know, it's not like a loan application. You know, you got to submit this, and this.
Right.
So I think that shows a lot of leadership.
I don't know. I mean, I think everybody has, you know, that's one thing that's fantastic about being in Nashville is that find, you know, I mean, the same people that play on the road with Blake Shelton will come and play on my record. Did
Bo Tackett play on your record?
No, it's another guy. I don't know if he still plays for Blake, but yeah, so I've had some amazing musicians that I've worked with over the years, and I just kind of mostly stay out of their way.
Good for you.
I'll say like, can you maybe try something different there or whatever? But one thing I learned early on in Nashville is that, you know, it's like, you don't have to direct these people.
No,
right?
Not especially in any studio musicians, but especially in that.
It's like you give them the song and you kind of tell them what you're going for. Like, hey, I'm wanting this to sound you know, kind of rootsy or whatever. And usually you have that conversation with the producer and you know, like kind of where you're headed with it. And then you really just step back and let them do their thing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. They know they're going to have so many more musical ideas than I will. They're going to have so many more like nuances that they can put into it. And it doesn't matter if someone's playing on my record here or if they're playing on, you know, Carrie Underwood's record here. They're still like, it's not like they're going to play worse for me.
No, not
I mean,
those.
Pro musicians are pro musicians, and they're going to put every ounce of what they've got into every song that they do, you know, because they love music, and it's like they get to do music, and it's, you know, and for me, it's a gift to meet these people and go, wow, you know, you played drums on every song I loved back in the 90s, you know, it's like, wow. Like, this is, you know, I can't believe, like, this is a person that's been out on tour with Emmylou Harris, and now they're playing bass on my record. And it's just, you know, or you'll be working with someone in the studio, and a few months later, you'll see him on the CMAs with Miranda Lambert. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the guy that played, you know, keys on my last album, you know, and it's that kind of stuff that it just blows me away here.
Who played on your last record, which I have a few questions for, Song Sampler Volume 1 and 2? Who is the acoustic player and who's the electric player?
So it's actually a couple of different people. So Carl Miner is the guitar player who did, so the Song Sampler 1 and 2, the reason it's called 1 and 2 is because I did a collection of 5 songs and then I did 2 more. So it's like first sampler and 2, right? Okay. So that's where the 1 and 2 comes in. So Carl Miner did all of the acoustic and electric. Well, he did the acoustic stuff. And then the other 2 songs were done by Dave Smith, who he plays guitar for and sings harmonies for Toby Keith. So he's usually out on the road with Toby Keith. And then there was another gentleman, I'm trying to remember his name. I didn't get to know him as well. But it's, what I did is this last project, I did this whole, because I wanted to really take people behind the scenes, is I did a whole behind the music thing where I took people into the studio and I have like actual little YouTube videos of interviews that I did with each of these musicians.
That's on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, so it's on my YouTube channel. And I was just going to look at...
Is your YouTube channel Shan's Music? Or?
Yeah, it's Shan's Music. So, let's see.
Like playing with Reba. It's great.
So,
it's great.
One of the musicians played with Reba. Tommy Harden's his name. He played drums. He played with Alabama. Then Michael Ryan played with Emmylou Harris. It's Kenny Greenberg. He's the one.
Oh yeah, he's one of the top session guys in Nashville.
Yeah, he's fantastic, and he's great. And I apologize, I couldn't remember his name, but
no.
But I knew it was Kenny something. But
he's one of the best session players in town.
Yeah, he was fantastic, and he had just come back from playing on, you know, some major stars record in LA, and then he's like showing up to play on my little.
No, he's a session guy.
Record, and it's like it's crazy. And he, you know, one of the question I asked him was, you know, what's it like being a studio musician with, you know, and he said, well, it's, you know, it's the people you meet. Yeah. And he just, you know, those guys play so much together. They're just, I mean, it is kind of like a family in the studio.
Oh yeah.
Even if
Totally.
I don't know them all, they all know each other.
Absolutely.
And they're all very friendly and gracious and professional, you know.
Very cool. Yeah.
There's no like noodling between songs, right?
No,
there's no like riffing out on Stairway to Heaven. You know, it's like they know they're there to like do the Shantell Ogden songs, and I'm paying them for that time, and they're very respectful of it.
And they want to do it well, so they're going to spend any free time they have thinking about how to improve what they just laid down or some ideas. They're really serious there. I went to a session. I was fortunate a couple of years back. Somebody invited me, and it was so. And you're right, it is like a family. They all know each other. It's a nice experience to do that.
Yeah.
Questions about this last record, Song Sampler Volume 1 and 2, and I would encourage people to listen to it. It was very cool. The first thing that struck me is the clarity of the mix, and I didn't know if you engineered that or like it's really well done.
So once again, another area that I'm like, no, I'm not a mixing engineer. I'm not a mastering engineer. I'm not a gear person, really, you know. And I'm like, well, you can either spend a decade learning that stuff and getting good at it, but I'd rather spend a decade writing more songs. So
Absolutely.
So I've got some wonderful people. So this last record, I loved working with, his name's Bill McDermott. He was the producer. And sometimes if you're an independent artist, you don't always get that same process as an artist that is, you know, coming with a big budget and established team. And it's because you don't have the money behind you. And so, but Bill, to his credit, I mean, he treats every project, even those that aren't super high budget, as a legitimate project. So we sat down, we talked about each song. He threw down some ideas. We talked about vibes. And then when we went into this, and then he selected these musicians based on the kind of stuff we wanted to do. And that was another behind the music interview. There's another one that talks about him, like pre-production and what that looks like. And then when we went into the studio, he just kind of he would play a sample of the song and he'd say, okay, this one we're going for, boom, boom, boom. Don't make it too heavy because the rest of the record's a little lighter. So he just kind of like put them in this box and said, okay, here's your sandbox, go be creative in it.
All right.
And then they did, and we recorded it. We recorded at Benchmark Sound. Chris Utley was the engineer, and
it's very well. It's so clear. It's so clean.
And then Bill took back everything and he like mixed it, and then I sent it to a mastering company. I really like Yes Master in Nashville. Amy is the person I use there. She's fantastic. And she really kind of puts that icing on the very top of it. But it takes a village. Like this stuff, I mean, I know that there are artists that do a lot more themselves, but
honestly, there's not. I mean, you're like sort of beating yourself up. There are not a lot of artists that do that. There's a lot of guitar players that do that.
Yeah.
Because guitar guys by nature, they're kind of geeky and they like getting into software and playing with sounds. But there are very few artists, unless they're guitar players,
right, that
do that. Honestly, I mean, no artists are mixing their own records for the most part. They're really not. And I've had, plenty of artists on the show. So you're doing what artists do. You're good at Hey, be no different than like, I can probably fix my roof if I pull out enough books and watch. No, if I have a leak, right, I can go on YouTube. I don't want to do that. I'm just going to get someone in here to do it for me because what's the value of your time that you're going to spend? And they're going to do a better job quicker. So, no, I think most people that are smart operate like that. So, I really enjoyed the record. It was really cool. And the other questions I had, we already answered about, one question I had, did you do all the background vocals?
So the background vocals, that was another kind of interesting conversation with Bill McDermott, the producer. Bill DeLuigi and I have written so much together, and when I go out on the road, like if I'm playing a bigger show or if I'm doing a band thing, I will have Bill come and do like harmonies for me, and he'll play acoustic, but he'll do more of a lead kind of thing on the acoustic. And so Bill McDermott said, what would you think about having Bill D do harmonies on some of these songs? Because there's something cool, he said, because the two of you have played and sung so much, and most of the, a lot of the songs we wrote together, so the work tapes had both of us, singing.
Okay.
And he said, what would you think about having Bill D do some of the harmonies? And I was like, well, yeah. And so Bill's like, sure, I'll do the harmonies. So he came in and did some harmonies. I had another co-writer named Delnora Reed who came and did some harmonies. And then, and then I did some harmonies. And then, it was kind of just like a smattering of different kinds of harmonies. But most of the harmonies, most of the songs that I wrote with Bill, he did harmonies on Heart That Breaks Me. He did harmonies on Way Back in Haystack. He did harmonies on Heroes and Villains. So those are songs that I wrote with him, So
what was good, the placement of them was really smart. That's what I was most I really enjoyed about it. What, the vocals were good, but the placement of them were pretty clever, is what I thought.
Yeah, I think that's all about kind of the mixing side, and Bill McDermott has a great ear for mixing. That's another thing that's kind of funny is I know when I like it and I know what I like, but sometimes it's hard for me to communicate when we get to mixing if something isn't resonating.
Yeah.
So what I have done to circumvent that and to make up for my own weakness is I've just found people that I like the sound of the records they're doing. I'm like, hey, I like that. I like that sound. I like what you're doing there mixing. And then I just let them do their thing. And I might say hey, can you drop the vocals a little more into the mix? Or can you, there'll be a small tweak here and there, but I'm not that person that's like, hey, the hi-hat was too punchy on measure. The verse, can you, I don't.
Yeah, you're not.
Music like that. I just, I kind of am like the big picture person.
You're a vibe person. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just, I don't.
Yeah, I couldn't see you saying that.
I think that's you work with good people, and then you just let them do what they're good at, right? Yeah. And you don't have to micromanage good people doing what they love and what they're good at. And
these guys and gals make dozens and dozens of hit records, so why they clearly know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They know how to make things sound pleasant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very cool. Hey, tell me your top three Shantell Desert Island discs in no particular order, and just for now, because that's kind of moving target thing.
Oh. Okay, one of them is a singer-songwriter named Martin Sexton.
Mm-hmm.
He has a record called Black Sheep that I love. He's a phenomenal singer and guitar player and songwriter. And that record, there's something really authentic and vulnerable about that record.
A Nashville guy?
No, I don't think he recorded it in Nashville. I don't even know where he recorded it.
Okay.
He actually started doing music kind of busking on the streets of Boston. And he he's just a phenomenal kind of under the radar guy. He's never really, I mean, he's a troubadour, right? He's one of those guys that plays shows and travels around on his own. And I saw him a couple years ago at the City Winery. You know, it's weird. Like with him, I was so afraid to go to one of his shows because I was like, what if he's a jerk? You know?
Oh, be careful. You don't want to meet your heroes sometimes. That kind
right. Like he's going to ruin this for me. But it was just the opposite. Like he was just so genuine. And I heard him a couple of years ago at City Winery. And at some point, it was during Americana Fest. And at some point, his guitar went out, right? The audio just cut out. And you know what he did? He started beatboxing with his mouth.
That's funny.
Keep the vibe going. And it was like, man, he's such a professional. Right? He's such an amazing musician.
Martin Sexton,
Martin Sexton, yep. Another one of the records. See, the record thing's a little hard for me because I'm such a loyalist to songs, not really to records. Not really.
Ah, gotcha.
But yeah, so that would be one. I mean, I probably, just from a classic standpoint, I'd probably take like a Joni Mitchell record because I love Joni Mitchell. Just from a storyteller standpoint, she's amazing. And then maybe if the island was, maybe if the island needed cleaning, I'd take the Bee Gees.
Maybe that's why I don't listen to the Bee Gees. That's great. That was good. You know, I've had like 3 people on the show that I could think of that started their careers busking or that.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, that's some serious commitment.
Oh,
you know, I've never been a
actually
busker.
4.
Yeah,
4.
I've never really been a much of a busker, but I mean, there's been a couple shows that the turnout wasn't great, and so you like move it to the street and hope that you can make gas money.
Right. But that's different from being like a professional player on the street.
I can't. Yeah, there are people that do it on Broadway here. You know, you can see every weekend, like they almost have the city kind of out put together in grids, right? Like this is my corner, this is your corner, you know, and they're down there every weekend, you know, just playing for tourists.
I don't know if you know this name. Do you know J.D. Simo?
Mm-mm.
He's a pretty well-known guy in Nashville, electric sort of blues guitar player. He was busking, and he was like literally like almost like homeless, and he got discovered busking, and he wound up playing for Don Kelly's band at I forgot where he plays now, but that's a pretty famous place. Don Kelly like grooms these great electric, and then his career took off after that. So it's several people have done that.
Yeah.
All righty. Are you good with balancing time, like business and personal, with friends and family outside of, or you tend to be a workaholic?
I mean, I don't know that anybody really feels like they're good at it. I mean, I do it, but I tend to structure my time. If I give myself a deadline, it's better, right?
Yeah.
So, like I have to write, or I've got to write this many songs, and then the albums I'm starting to record on this date, and then it's going to be finished on that date. And then, I schedule some social media posts usually on the weekend, because social media is part of the job, right?
Absolutely.
It's part of the job. And so I'll do that on the weekend. So during the week, I don't have to spend as much time sort of thinking of things to share. Like it's all kind of going out there. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure I could always be more productive, but I try to be productive with my time.
Tough question.
Yeah, it is a tough question.
No, the one I'm going to ask you is a tough question. The next one.
They're getting harder. Okay.
Yeah, this is the tough section. What do you like most about yourself?
I mean, I think I care about people, and I think that's a good quality to have.
Where'd you get that from? Is that like, were your parents like that? Because you are a very caring person. That's really, I told you yesterday, or when we were supposed to do this, I think yesterday or the day before, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, you're that like comes off of you.
You know, I think my parents are good people. My mom's a really caring person. But I kind of just came here that way. Like I was the kid that, you know, if a kid was getting picked on, I was the person that stood up for him. If there was a stray animal in the neighborhood, it would find me. You know, like I've always been that. I've just always been that person.
Do you have siblings?
No siblings.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess that's something that I like about myself, is that I feel like I try to think about other people.
Yeah.
And you know, I try to be a good friend. If I know someone's having a good, you know, hard time, I'll call them and just check in, and you know.
I think you're very good at that, for whatever that's worth. I mean, not that I know you well, but I mean, just my exposure to you has been, you know, you've been, that's like your leading sort of trait. You know, it's easy to spot that. It's very genuine. Best childhood memory.
Oh, there's so many good ones. So when I was little, you know, 3, 4, my dad would take me with him to the farm. They had these troughs, like water troughs for the cows, right? And he would set me on top of the water trough and let me put my feet in them, in the trough.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
It was always like really tiny, and like it felt really funny, but it was cool. And I would usually talk a lot. I've always been a talker. As you can tell today, I'm a talker. And I would talk to the cows, and like they would kind of gather around.
Was that your first audience?
Yes, it was, because I used to the cows all the time. And you know, but I just remember sitting in that trough, like swinging my legs, you know, talking to the cows, the toes in the algae. And I mean, it was also like I was independent, right? My dad would just kind of leave me there. He knew I wasn't going anywhere, right? Yeah. And then he'd like go kick up the hay or whatever. But it was just this moment of just kind of just joy, just childhood joy.
That's cool. Happiest moment or happiest time in your life?
I don't know. I think I've had a lot of good times. And I think happiness is a kind of a choice in a lot of ways. I don't know that I've had my happiest time yet. Maybe that's something to look forward to. I've definitely had a lot of good times though, and I'm grateful for that. Way more good than bad.
That's great. Who's had the biggest influence on you, both musically and then also personally?
You know, I think personally, obviously my family, my parents. We talked about the work ethic. They've been supportive. They've been worried, but because they know what a creative lifestyle is in terms of like the uncertainty and the harshness of it.
Sure.
So just like any parents, you know, I'm sure they were worried about me.
Yeah.
But they've also been very supportive and encouraging, and I think excited for things for me.
They always will worry about you. Parents always worry. I mean, our kids are older. We always worry. Even though when they're doing great, you always like, no.
Yeah.
You just want good things for them, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think musically, it's impossible for me to say. Like, I think really what impacted me and what has continued to impact me is just brilliant songs, and just, I don't know. I think I just have so much respect for the songwriters here. Every time I'm in a room with a great songwriter, that influences me, right? It teaches me something. It helps me level up my own songwriting game. I think that's, I think that just great songs and amazing songwriters are really what influences me. When I moved to Nashville, for the first 6 months, I was pretty creatively dry because I'd been in this machine of music school and all the joy had kind of been sucked from it, right? Like it was this very clinical kind of environment in a lot of ways.
Sure.
And it took me a while to kind of rediscover who I was artistically. And every month I would go to the Bluebird Cafe and listen to Tom Schuyler, Jelly Roll Johnson, Tony Arata, just people like that, right? That have written songs like The Dance and, countless other hits, right? And I was like, I went there to be reminded of great songs. And one thing I love about Nashville is you hear a lot of great songs that you'll never hear on the radio.
Right.
And some of them are funny, just funny songs. Tom Schuyler, who's written a bunch of hits, has a song called Who Needs a Hummer? And it's about people who and it's like, it's so funny. Like it's a creative and fun song. But I did that because I felt like I needed to reconnect with the art of it. It is a skill, but there's a lot of art in it too.
Well, at least you were aware enough of that and you went and sought inspiration, which you basically fed your thirst for inspiration. That's pretty,
Yeah, I mean,
I had to sit around and do nothing.
I had to do something because it was like, how do I sit down to write when all I can hear is like the voices in my head? No, that's not a good, blah, blah, blah. You got to do more chords. It's not fresh. It's not like you sit down with your inner critic, but your inner critic is also like every class you had.
Oh, your inner critic is the worst thing in the world.
That is just,
terrible.
It's kind of overwhelming. So, but I loved going to Berklee and I learned a lot about the mechanics of songwriting. And it was a great experience, Do you have
any hobbies outside of music? And
I love to cook. I like to golf. I'm terrible at golfing, but I love it. I'm kind of into decorating and like doing artsy things in my house. And I love to travel, especially internationally. I love to travel. And it's fun when I can combine that with music, Yeah.
What's your favorite place you've traveled?
Man, it's really hard to beat Europe. Budapest and Prague and some of those old Gothic cities are just incredible. I mean, I like to read, I like to go hiking. I mean, I'm not one of the
do a lot. You got a lot of stuff going on.
That sit around a whole lot, Obviously, you've probably seen my little dog kind of wandering around.
The most well-behaved dog I've had on the show, without a doubt.
One of my hobbies, right?
Yeah.
Because we're like dog park and doing things, and she's a sweetheart.
Very cool.
So yeah, lots of hobbies like that. Lots of things that I enjoy.
2 more questions. Toughest decision you had to make or most difficult thing you've had to do?
Toughest decision I've had to make. I mean, I think, you know, when relationships end, that can be hard. My friend Jan Buckingham, who is a hit songwriter, and she's written songs for Whitney Houston and Pam Tillis and whatever. She said, you know, she said, you can know that it's wrong in your head. But she said, I've never figured out how to, you know, tell your heart that, right? So your head heals a lot faster than your heart does.
Yeah.
And I think that that's, you know, those decisions are always hard, right?
There's a song in there, right there, what you just
yeah,
said.
there is. Yeah, I've written some songs with Jan too, but yeah, it's I think when things don't work out the way you hoped or wanted to, and you're not only losing that relationship, you're kind of mourning the loss of the possibilities.
Yeah, the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could, yeah.
So that, I mean, I think those are the hardest things. Those are the hardest moments. You know, certainly, you know, I've lost some people. That's been really hard, you know,
Sure. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, those are things that happen to all of us.
Thanks. Last question. Most important lesson life has taught you?
Everyone has a battle. You know,
Ain't that the truth?
I used to think that very naively that some people just had it made, you know, and I think I've learned time and time again that no matter how great someone's life looks on the outside or how happy they seem or how good it looks like they have it, there's always something.
Yeah, you never know
always
what's going
something
on.
we haven't seen or that we don't know, or something they're struggling with, or there's always something.
Yeah.
Like, none of us get through this life unscathed. None of us get through this life without some kind of trial. It's part of life.
Definitely. No matter how good it looks on Facebook.
Yeah. Well, news, I'm like, I don't, you know, some people are much more open with that stuff, but I'm like, God, nobody wants to hear if I'm having a bad day. Like, that's not, and it's not something I feel like I need to burden the world with either. You know, I will just, you know, I'll talk to a friend. Or,
yeah, I'm more like that. I don't get that when I see.
Yeah, I'm not that person. And, you know, maybe that's what they need and that's okay. But I don't know. I didn't grow up digital. I didn't grow up putting every single thing of my life online. And so I just don't.
Sometimes too, it's like, man, you should have coping skills for this thing you're bitching about. You know, to be honest with you, like, not everything is a Facebook worthy brain dump crisis. You know, like when I am outraged, you know, this guy just backed into me and he had the nerve to man, you should be able to work that shit out on your own. You should have the coping skills to deal with that, like in 15 minutes and then maybe another 15 minutes or a half hour later with your friends or family, whoever you're, you know, ending your, you know, it's like, that's not, you know, that's not a, you know, something that you need to share with all your Facebook friends, you know. And I'm sorry if I'm offending somebody, but, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe that's all they have, but, you know, at the end of the day, I don't know. I think everybody has their stuff.
Yeah, totally. Well, hey, listen, let me first of all, thank you very much. I'm glad we finally got to hang out and talk.
This has been fun.
And I didn't realize how much time went by. This was really cool.
Yeah, lots of time.
Yeah.
Who is going to even be interested enough to hear all this?
Oh, people will listen. You're interesting. But let me tell people where to find you. First of all, Shantell Ogden, Shantell. Her last name is Ogden, Ogden. She's got 7 albums out. Her last one, which is really cool, is called, now I lost the name of it here, Song Sampler Volume 1 and 2. Everything is pretty much on iTunes, I believe, or whatever streaming services, right?
Yep.
If you are so inclined, check out the substance abuse disorder or the substance recovery stuff that she's working on. It's at shantellogden.com/angels, and contribute to that project if you believe in it. And she's doing some good things, and she's a super good person. And hey, have her do a concert at wherever you want. You can hire her for that through your donation. Also, you could find Shantell on social media. And by the way, I meant to say that thing you did on YouTube, just to tell everybody, if you're making a record, and you know, a lot of people, you know, have a marketing background, so people always say, oh, what can I do for marketing? What you did is a really interesting thing, like the backstory to the making of. That is a very interesting thing to do. So if you're making a record, and that's the average person does not have any clue what making a record is like. And the only reason I know is because I've been doing this show for 750 episodes, and I've met a bunch of people. Like I said, I got to go to the studio. But that is a really interesting thing to do, and that will get traction on YouTube channels. But check out Shantell's social media. It's Shan's Music, SHANS Music, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, and that's it, right?
Yeah, I'm not hard to find,
yeah,
and
right.
I'd love to connect with people. To me, it's not the cat videos on social media. Opportunity to like make a connection with someone.
Although cat videos are a lot better than politics, I got to tell you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Anything else that you want to let people know about, or that you got going on?
I mean, I want to thank you for your time and
kidding me.
doing this. I felt very, it's just been really neat to share, and you've asked some hard questions, and I appreciate that. You've really taken time to think of good questions and to ask good questions, and thank you for that.
Well, that's kind of you to say, and thank you for being so sharing and open on them. So right back at you.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your social media channels next to the cat videos. We appreciate your support. Please check out Shantell's music at shantellogden.com. Like I said, she's got 7 CDs out, and check out her recovery program at shantellogden.com/angels. And most important, man, especially nowadays, keep in mind, happiness really is a choice. So choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Shantell, thank you so much.